episode. Let's see here. Let's click on it. Check your chat there for the pop-up chat. Oh my goodness, I changed the graphic, the background for the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly channel, and apparently that's what you see when it's waiting. And I'm not gonna lie, it is kind of giving me a headache.
Oh wow!
I had to like individually keep the image several times. I did not realize it was going to do that. So we went from not having an image to having an image that gives any viewer a headache.
Oh, you're already being called a bearded hipster, Joe. I wasn't going to say anything.
Does anybody do they have the PBR here? Do we have the PBR that I requested? Yeah, it is totally hipster. This beard right here, it'll be gone probably tomorrow because tomorrow is December 1st. No! And you know, I have every assumption that I'm going to wake up in the morning with a bunch of hot wax all over my face and the papers already plastered on top. And I'm just going to stand there and be like, all right, you need me to do this, don't you? And it's going to be Caroline. She's going to be standing above me with this jar of hot wax and one of those like popsicle stick dippers and being like,
So basically Friday.
Yes. It's December 1st, aka the first day of no shave November, and she's coming for me. I get the feeling like, because yesterday it was that feels weird.
That's generally not something you want to hear.
No, yeah, that feels weird. That feels weird. Like I just was like, she got close to me and was like, is that your beard? Is that smell your beard? Is that what it smells like?
Wow.
So yeah, apparently, like they did a study a few months ago. It's like no matter what ends up happening, by the end of the day, you end up with all of the stuff you've eaten throughout the day just ends up like stuck in the beard. There's nothing you can do about it. Like just the grime in the beard. I bought beard balm. I've got like shampoo. Like it gets shampooed. It gets conditioner. It gets like a stay-in conditioner. And yeah, it's my wife hates it.
If you would grow your hair out a bit, you'd fit in just fine up here in this area.
I see that, man. Yeah. Yeah, I need like a small tiny house that I can live in like 3 months a year in Portland before I really earned this beard, right?
You're gonna go around talking about retiring at the age of 30. Yep, you fit in just fine.
Yeah, as long as you did it wearing something you bought from Goodwill.
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy, it looks like we have some individuals joining us. Good old Dean. Yes, thank you so much, bearded hipster. Dean, you know what? I have not seen what you look like, but your avatar certainly looks like you might have a bit of a facial hipster hair going on yourself, sir. So I have no idea. And it is good to hear from you, Norm. Hello, Norm. I heard from Ryan earlier today on Twitter. I think Norm and Ryan, you guys are both gamers. I think you're both teachers. If I haven't been reading, I feel like I heard that somewhere. And I was talking about what games I was playing with my kids at the Gamers Club at school. We had 2 dueling games of Pandemic going on. The Pandemic base game that won without me, and then the 5-player, which you can play with 5, in the Pandemic Iberia expansion, or not expansion, it's like a standalone game. And we ended up coming down to the last play, like the absolute last play, and we ended up losing barely. Oh, so close. It was 1 action away from a win. We had to wait for an entire another round for it to come back to the only player that had all of the red cards, and we could not survive, unfortunately. We did not have the cards left in the player deck. We were doing a good job, but man, it was crazy, and I loved them though. I love seeing both of those games, and honestly, like I'm developing much more of an appreciation for Pandemic than I had. So, it sounds like the Hulk Hogan look. Nice, Trent. Well, anyhow, yeah, we're back and we're actually recording again, which I was telling this to TC had been, for folks here like Dean and Norm that join us on a regular basis. We're here recording together like once, twice a week. It felt weird. You know, we took off a whole week for Thanksgiving, and it's good to be back in the saddle. I'm glad to be back with you guys.
Yeah, it's been a long week. We binge podcasts. We just do it all at once in a short period of time.
Oh my goodness, man. We have had 4 in a week, and that's my fault, dude. That is all me. It is like, you know, I'm just like trying to get these things scheduled. I'm not a good scheduler. I definitely am nobody's secretary, even less of my own secretary. And TC, I appreciate you dealing with that.
Yeah, it's fun. It's a ride.
It is, man. It can be an intense ride. So Kate, on behalf of everybody who loves and cares about TC, you know, thank you so much for accepting the life. You know, it's like we're going on tour.
I'm the emotional support here.
Yeah, absolutely. So for me, I got to split my emotional support between 2 poodles and my wife, who's usually at odds with everything. But I you know, that's kind of, I think that's marriage somewhat.
it's a compromise most of the time. It's a good one.
TC, I think you guys, and I think Trent is similar in this way, that TC, you and Carissa are able to kind of duke it out over like a historical game. And Trent, you and Sarah go at it head to head. It's so funny to see Trent and Sarah play any game with interaction, because it's like, here you go, Trent.
I don't know who I'm supposed to do this offensive move towards, so it'll be you, Trent. That's pretty much what she does every
That's
time.
exactly right.
Well, that's just Carissa. Yeah, she's like, I'm going to do this against you, TC. I'm like, okay, cool.
It's so funny to be sitting at the table and just see it happen organically. Like, you know, I just can't quite impart to you listeners how funny it is to just be sitting at the table and see how automatic that decision is. It's like, because usually, you know, when I've got an attack in my hand, I'm sitting there like cagey, like, okay, well, I don't want to piss anybody off here. So I make sure that the person I target is the person that looks like they're winning, or I can make a case for it. With Sarah, it was like, you go, Trent, enjoy.
Pretty much exactly it.
It was kind of fun. It was like, okay, well, they're going to take each other out of the game, so I guess it's just me and you competing.
Yeah, when we played our inaugural play at TI4, Carissa said, I don't remember much about this game, but I do remember that if I'm going to attack someone, it's going to be UTC. I'm like, oh, okay, that set the tone. Awesome.
Honestly, TC, I'm sorry to say this, but if we ever get a game of Twilight Imperium in together, that's going to be me too. Like, it's
great.
Yeah. Oh no, you make me paranoid, and
It's just
I'm already
carnage
paranoid.
It's gonna be carnage on the right side of the galaxy, and the left side of the galaxy. We're like, let's avoid that over there.
Yeah. Well, you know what, guys? It's great to be back, and I hope that, you know, all the folks that have been waiting for us to come back. Now we have Carmen on. It's great to hear from you, Carmen. Good to see you. Yeah, he's in our chat there. So we have Dean, Carmen, and Norm.
Hey.
And you know, we have a few lurkers, as I heard somebody say here over the last week, what you call people who read but don't comment. So it's good to hear from you as well. Maybe one of them is my mom, who I know sometimes watches, and I don't think she gets how to chat. So I don't think she actually has that capability. She's probably talking at the screen right now, and she's probably gonna say, Joseph, stop it. You need to go on here. You stop talking about me. So we will do that, Mom, and it's good if you're there. So thanks, Mom. Hi, Mom. Anyhow, we're going to talk about board games here, because this is episode 142 of The Good, the Board, and the Ugly, and we are going to talk specifically today about Trent's trip to BGG Con, which happened almost. You know, you were down there 2 weeks ago, but we took a week off. We had an extra recording, and Trent, I gotta say, man, this was a year where I feel like you came back with a lot of solid, fun little games. So anyway, your whole trip and everything, we're going to talk about that and a lot of games. So I'm really looking forward to hearing from you, man.
Let's do this.
Absolutely. So, yes, welcome to The Good, the Board, and the Ugly, a podcast about board games. I'm your host, Joe Sallin. I'm joined tonight by the guy who went to BGG Con, Trent Hamm. How you doing tonight, Trent?
Hi there. I'm doing great.
And TC Reed's also here to help counsel me with my grief of not having been to BGG Con with his moral support net, his daughter, Kate. How are you both doing out there on the West Coast?
Doing good. I'm great emotional support.
Doing great up here.
It was good to hear from both of you, and I look forward to our review section because I think there's going to be some interesting counterbalancing, and I'm really glad that Kate's going to be here to join us for that. So,
awesome.
Let's go ahead. I know, Trent, you are kind of Trent is respectfully passing on this go of reviews because his discussion during our actual topic is going to include a myriad of reviews, so look forward to that. Let's hear first, though, from you, TC, and Kate. Tell us about The Thing.
Okay. So for my birthday, I got from a friend, I got The Thing, Infection at Outpost 31. And I was really on the fence on this. I'm like, you know, I love the movie. It's like my absolute favorite horror movie, my absolute favorite John Carpenter movie, but it's a licensed game, and I was like super hesitant. It's from USAopoly, which is another red flag. Publisher, which is like Raygun, I think. First time designer, so I just kind of gave it a pass. I was like, but then I got it. I'm like, okay, well now we have to play it. So we break it out, and I'm looking like, oh, the artwork's great and everything, and the game itself is rated 17 plus, and I think that's just because it's based on a R-rated movie. I can't find anything about the game that would provoke that, because even like the quotes from the movie are all like starred out. You know, it says, I'd like to get the F, you know, beep, beep, beep. You know, they just. So, of course, since it's a 17 or over game, my kids are immediately drawn to it, right?
Yes,
They're like,
of course.
Oh, Dad, it's the thing. We've seen the clips, and Kate's like jonesing to play this thing. I'm like, are you sure? I'm like, okay. So we get me, my wife, my friend Mike, and Kate, and we play this game. And it turns out it's a pretty solid game. It captures the theme really well. After one play, Kate was immediately jonesing to play it again. Our second play, Liam in. So we got Liam in on it. And yeah, it was. Hang on, buddy.
That's Liam. That is TC mentioned him, and Liam was like, oh, speak of the devil. So is Liam giving his little micro review right now?
Yeah, he came in and heard me, so I was so excited about it. But yeah, so he got in on it. Marissa helped him play, and we absolutely had a ball with this game. There's dice rolling. There's, someone's the imitation trying to throw the whole game. You don't know who to trust.
Is it guaranteed here?
It's guaranteed.
Okay.
We're right off the bat.
And sometimes there's two.
And there's a potential for a second one to come out. And it's a blood card you get, right? Because in the movie, I do a blood sample. But I think the coolest thing about the game that we didn't get to is that when you get to the third level, you can get a flamethrower. And you can vote to torch someone with the flamethrower. Just take them out of the game.
Bye-bye.
Yeah.
That's like getting thrown in the frig, like just on steroids.
Yeah, it's like
player elimination. Is that what I'm hearing? Like they're just player elimination?
Yeah, but it's not till towards the end of the game because you don't get the flamethrower till like really close to the end. So you're you it or not, and plus it takes everyone has to vote except for the person getting torched to get torched. But what do you think, Kate? What do you think about it?
I love it personally. I like that type of game where like one person's the bad guy and they're like hidden. People trying to find it out and kill him or tie him to a chair.
Yeah, you can tie him to a couch. You can get rope and tie him to the couch so they're out for the round.
I personally really enjoyed this game and I can't wait to play it again.
Yeah, the biggest downside to it is you need a high player count. It plays 4 to 8. With 4, the humans have not won this game yet because it's pretty difficult.
It's hard.
Yeah, and there's the dice rolling. Like you have to fight. There's like 3 stages to the game. You have to fight the thing. There's like a stage 1, stage 2, and stage 3. So like to beat the thing the first time, you got to roll 6 dice, and you got to roll a 4 of a kind, and you roll the dice 3 times. It's Yahtzee. To beat him the second time, you roll 6 dice, and you have to roll 3 of a kind on 2 rolls. And then the Blair monster, which comes out at the end, is just insane. But yeah, I mean, you really don't have to really throw the game as the infected person to win it. But I think with a higher player count, there'd be more suspicion.
The higher, the funner.
Yeah, and it plays a lot quicker than Battlestar. Battlestar can be a slog. complex than Dead of Winter, which you like too, Kate.
I don't remember it.
Now, that's the game you threw us. Oh man, that was the game we found out Kate could really throw people under the bus. Was Dead of Winter. But yeah, if you like the movie, games that have a hidden trader component, it's a solid game. I was really surprised how good this thing was. Get it?
Yeah, this thing.
Yeah, the minis are good, the components are good, and it was not total garbage, which is a really nice surprise.
That's really awesome. I've actually heard some positive buzz regarding this one, that it's like it actually seems to have a bit of a niche carved out in between like Battlestar Galactica and the Resistance, is what I had heard. How would you analyze that?
Yeah, it's more complicated than the Resistance. I mean, it took us about an hour and a half to play. The box is 1 to 2 hours. And the rules are a lot more clear than Battlestar. I mean, you start throwing in all the expansions, the Battlestar, you got a convoluted mess that you're going to have to look up errata for on Fantasy Flight games. And much like Battlestar, the theme really captures the theme. The theme is really captured in the game.
Okay.
I mean, Kate didn't even know, but she kept picking Blair to go out. And I'm like, dude, you're Wilford Brimley. You're Wilford Brimley going out. That's awesome. Of course, I had to be Kurt Russell, right? And then Carissa had to be Childs, Keith David. So you're like, right. And the minis look pretty cool. They look like the characters. You're like, yeah, we're going here. Even the dog monster and the spider head monster. Yeah. And it's a solid game. I'd recommend giving it a shot, but if you don't like the Resistance and you don't like Battlestar, steer clear of it, man.
But it sounds what's interesting about this one is that it really is about a player being sort of the enemy. And I feel almost like maybe Alien Encounters, the Legendary Encounters system, Legendary Encounters, which was about the movie Alien and its 3, continuations.
4 sequels, yeah.
And now there's been 2 more recently, but yeah, they haven't yet updated those, so they must be held on a different license or something, Prometheus and Alien Covenant. But anyhow, the thing is that game, which I just played a couple of times over break and was kind of revisited how interesting that system is, and I love it for its full cooperation, but they really did a lot to develop the Alien player in that game, and even more so with the expansion that came out that sort of added even more for the Alien player. So maybe, like that's the direction that these games where it's a suspense game where there's a bad guy, kind of the idea is that, one of you could be the bad guy. And I kind of see, though, with the thing, like, the way that the action in the movie, it's taking possession of somebody. So, like, it really does make sense that it would be some sort of doppelganger situation, right? That's one of you is not who they seem. So it sounds interesting to me.
Yeah, it's fun. And then like Battlestar, where like you're the Cylon, you gotta look at the card to see what your secret Cylon power is. So you kind of figure out who the Cylon is. They stare at their card too long. And this one, it's just like it's just a red card, you're an imitation, blue card, you're human. That's it.
So you really don't know. You just have to read people. It really does keep the social aspect high.
And you can like throw in like sabotage cards or low cards. Like you go on missions, and one of them's like, we need like a petri dish and a flamethrower to succeed the mission. So you like choose the people you want to go, and then everyone contributes a card, and you mix them up, and then the leader looks at it and is like, okay. And the captain has the option of ditching one and getting a blind draw, which if you're the infected person, you could really screw the mission over that way. And then you reveal it, and if you don't have the petri dish and flamethrower, whatever the condition is, then you fail. This evil meter goes up, and if it reaches like 8 or 9, then it's game over. There's multiple ways to lose this. Like 4 rooms blow up, you're dead. You fail the mission 9 times, you're dead. If you get on the helicopter and someone's the infected, you lose. There's all kinds of ways to lose this thing. And it just all in each other's faces going, I don't trust you. I don't trust you either. It's like, you're thinking, no, you're the thing. I got the flamethrower. Don't make me throw a vote on this thing.
Yeah. So, but it sounds like it's one that's better at the higher player counts, or at least easier at the higher player counts.
Yeah, because at higher player counts, there's more of an option of who to bring on a mission and who not to. Because if you're playing like at 4, like the lowest you can, like they're 3, but most of them require 4 and like 2 particular specialties to go on it. If you have like more people, you can pick and choose who you want to bring. There's more chance for screwage, and like you could just throw the blame on someone who, if your imitation, like, no, it's really this guy. You could just like start really meta playing the whole thing.
Huh.
I had a chance to play this like at a game night with 7 players, and that's when the game really shone.
Oh.
The paranoia is just out the roof on this thing. And people are lying through their teeth, man. It's pretty cool. But if you don't like doing that kind of thing, it can be pretty difficult.
Oh no, I enjoy the social deduction. If that's a part of the game, man, that can be quite interesting. Trent, what do you think about this game that would sit somewhere between the Resistance and Battlestar Galactica?
I'm trying to get what distinguishes it from, say, other games that would fit in that same space, like
Dark Moon is what I was thinking.
Yeah, Dark Moon is exactly what I was thinking.
Dark Moon? Yes, I have. Dark Moon, everyone has a set of dice to rolling behind a screen.
Yeah.
And that's how it gets. So you bluff. He's like, well, I didn't roll anything good, when you could be like having this most awesome roll of all time when you're just
sandbagging.
You're sandbagging it. But the thing actually uses the cards like Battlestar does, and you're contributing cards and you're mixing them up. But it still has a dice rolling element where some of the mission, you like roll all the dice and it has to be like 20 or higher to succeed the mission. And each player has in their captain, they have a particular power they can contribute for being the captain. Like Kate's was, before you go on the mission, you can draw an extra card. So your hand
really
size,
helpful, by the way.
Yeah, remember your hand size is 5, but Blair lets you draw the 6th card. Or you could like re-roll all your dice instead of giving everyone an extra card.
My experience with Dark Moon,
actually,
I was gonna say jump in there. My experience with Dark Moon is that,
pardon me,
if you can jump in once and blatantly save the day on a particular challenge, you completely take yourself out of the question of being a traitor, because everyone just assumes, well, he must be good, and so then like you can get away with pretty much anything after that point.
That's social manipulation there, man.
Yeah.
I heard that, Trent. Next time I get in a game of Dark Moon with you, I'm gonna be like, hold on. It'll end up being me that's the actual traitor.
So, yeah.
Yeah, the whole thing with Dark Moon is like it's really critical to have a poker face when you roll the dice. You can roll the dice and be awesome. You gotta go, oh man, it's a bunch of crap.
It just makes me laugh to think about when I've seen people try a poker face and it fails. I think, like, poor Andy. By the way, anybody who's missing Andy Dennison, he is not feeling well. So send him your wishes to get back and get well, because he is the guy that my brain immediately goes to when I think about somebody who is the worst poker face of all time. Like if Andy says something, it's like you can immediately tell, dude. You had no assumption he was lying beforehand, but then the way he says it just makes you all go, Andy? Oh my God. And then everybody's just like slowly realize that Andy does nothing to help his situation. He makes it worse. And then it's like you just confirms what you thought. And anyway, yeah, that's what my head goes to. So the thing sounds interesting. Is it gonna feel very different from game to game?
Yeah, I think it will. Well, it's gonna feel different because different. Not the same person is gonna be the imitation. That's random. And Trent, I think the biggest selling point for this particular game is the theme.
Okay.
Honestly, Dark Moon is fairly similar in my opinion, but if you like the movie and you actually want to play the characters from the movie and get into the theme of the movie, that would be the biggest selling point for this particular game.
It sounds to me like they did quite a bit more work than you assume from some of the kind of more B-movie like intellectual properties. A lot of times those can just be kind of slapdash, put a big screen on this, kind of like they do with the Ghostbusters game, where it was was not very not very well received. I don't have any personal experience with it, but that's cool that they did that though. Well, thanks, TC. Yeah. And I'll jump into my reviews now because Trent's going to take the lion's share of the topic and reviews here, but I will get a couple in here. I'd like to shoe one under the rug really quick. It's Spyfall 2. If anybody did like Spyfall, I'd like to give you an idea of what Spyfall 2 is like. I'm not really going to go super into what Spyfall is, aside from just to say that it's a game where one of you is a spy and does not know the information everybody else has about where you're located, and you actually have to come up with questions to ask other players to try to show and let other players know that you're there, that you are one of the people who knows where you're at and you have a specific role in the area without giving the information away to the spy. So you have to ask really kind of cagey and questions where, you know, over this last Thanksgiving break, it was a big hit with my in-laws, and I asked a question. It was really fun. Like, we were at the docks, and my father-in-law is this huge music fan, like amazing music fan, and he gets every music reference ever. And I just asked the question. I asked to my brother-in-law, I said, hey, where's Otis? And you know, the best jokes are thoroughly explained, so let me let you know. Otis Redding sang Sitting at the Dock of the Bay, and that's one of the things he's most famous for. So this was a reference I anticipated everybody there to get eventually, and especially my father-in-law, who'd be like, I get what you're saying. He didn't get it. And guess why?
Why?
He was the spy. He was the one who did not know we were at. So it was kind of a sign to everybody, like, yeah, and we kind of like picked him out just with that. So it's totally, you know, like the question, where's Otis? Just seemed to me like a really contextually interesting thing. So it's a cool game, but here's what Spyfall 2 suffers from. First of all, as opposed to 30 locations from the base game, there's only 20 that come in Spyfall 2. So if you're using it as an expansion, maybe it'd be cool that way. But I really do think that on its own, there's less locations, especially the locations they chose tend to be vastly different from one another. You know, like being in jail is quite a bit different from every other location on there. And I feel like just when you've got such a smaller amount of locations, or, you know, like significantly smaller, I should say, that you end up needing to be even cagier, because I found that the spy had a much easier time in this game in general. It was very... all but 1 or 2 games, just because I knew where we were at, because it was obvious there just was not that, like, the locations were varied enough from one another that saying anything almost kind of gave you a set of hints, whereas they were much more similar in Spyfall 1, and that kind of almost played to the game's strengths. So I would say, you know, if you're buying Spyfall 2 as an expansion, great, go for it. If you're buying it as the game to replace Spyfall 1, be careful of that. If you're buying it because you want to play with huge groups, well, good luck. I never played it with huge groups, so I can't help you with that, because it does go up to like 12 as opposed to 8. But that's my take on Spyfall 2. Does anybody have anything to say about Spyfall?
I only played Spyfall once.
It seems like a game that you might enjoy, TC. Huh? Okay, so let me use this as a bit of a platform to transition into my next short review. So I think Spyfall is a game that's entirely social, right? Like it's barely even, like, the framework of the game is solid, but it's bare bones, about as bare bones as you can get, right? I mean, like, it's just everybody gets a card. One of you gets a card that doesn't say what's on the other cards. Ask questions to each other, figure out where you are, or figure out who's the bad guy, who's the guy who doesn't know. Like, that's it, you know, and it's executed well. But I was told when I played this, my next game, I was told by an individual who's not playing the game, but just kind of sitting there, kind of an observer, who I feel like may have had a bone to pick with me. But they said that, first of all, they thought that my view in games was elitist. That was like the leading thing, and it was like,
of course.
Yeah, I guess, you know, of course. I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm just so not self-aware that I don't accept that I'm elitist. I want to think like, you know, I will not talk crap on a game until I've played it. Period, man. I'm not going to sit there and say, like, this is a bad game. I might be, like, not that interested in playing it, but if you're interested in playing it, who am I to tell you what you should or shouldn't do? You know? Like, I don't think having an opinion is elitist inherently. I mean, if you say, like, I didn't like this game, does that make you elitist? Inherently.
What do you think, Kate?
But I don't know.
We don't know.
The next point is...
Joe's an elitist.
Next point, though... I'm an elitist. That's correct. Thank you. Got the commentary. I appreciate it. So then the next point was, when I said I disliked the experience I was having, this individual, like I said, once again, the peanut gallery here said, well, some people enjoy social interaction. That was literally what was said. Some people enjoy social interaction. Not me, obviously, though, because, you know, like, who would talk to other people? Who would go out of their way to converse and hear from people? So it was right. So anyway, I'm reviewing the game Munchkin.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I've done a little bit of prefacing where I'm going to go with this, but let's put it like this. I have never played like any of the versions of Dungeons and Dragons that Munchkin is referential to. But in the game of Munchkin, it is a card drawing game where every card in the deck is imbalanced from everything else generally, and they get dealt randomly and drawn randomly by players. It has cards that say lose a level, which is essentially the same as losing a turn, sometimes worse. You have cards that say lose all your equipment. You have cards that say change your gender. You have cards that are amazing and say gain a level. So everything that happens in this game is generally outside of players' control, with the exception of the ability that a player has to sort of fight a monster and ask other players to help. And a lot of times what can happen is if you don't ask other players to help, they will be sitting on cards in their hands that will say, like, add this bad thing to a monster and make it worse for everybody trying to fight it. And then, you know, the game sort of has a way of, when a player feels like they're making progress, usually it's because they're drawing lucky. And then what will happen is another player will have drawn essentially a lucky card that says screw over another player, and used in the appropriate situation, which is entirely dictated by the randomness of the deck. This could really hurt the other player and set them maybe back to turn one. So the game seems, at first glance, like it's going to last a half an hour. But after you start actually playing cards on one another, you find that the game is actually going to last much, much longer. And it's because you have the ability, because of cards in your hand, to elongate the game by preventing any player from getting too far ahead. Alternatively, this could be used for comedic effect, to be played on a player that tends to be vocal when they're experiencing distress. Don't know anybody like this. You could play this card on this player because it's almost like pulling a string on the back of a toy. And you wait for it, you know, you pull back, and you just let that thing go, and it goes, and then you wait until later on in the game when that player finally gets back up to close to the level that the rest of the party is at. Then you wait and you pull that string back and you go. I may be the toy in this metaphor, but I will tell you this. Playing Munchkin was something that I thought, as soon as the game started, nothing else than, I want this experience to be over as quickly as possible.
Oh.
I wanted it to end. And let's put it like this. The fun screwing each other over would be cool if it wasn't actually screwing each other over. The problem with screwing each other over is it makes the screwing last longer, and everything lasts longer, and nothing happens because everybody's screwing everybody. And what do you love about Munchkin, Kate?
Go for it, Kate. Well, just as a reference, we have the original Munchkin, we have Star Munchkin, we have what's the Wild West version called? It's like the good, it's like the good,
bad, and the
the good, the bad, and the Munchkin. I think that's what it is. Yeah. So yeah, this is one of Kate's favorite games. So we'll go ahead and let you speak up. Go for it, Kate.
Pretty passionate about this.
Go for it.
I enjoy Munchkin, though I admit it's been forever since I've played it. I believe, like what you said, I think I would like the game because of the randomness of the cards. Like, you never know what you're gonna get, and you never know what's gonna hit you. Like, it also,
so it's like kind of dramatic, right? It kind of like, it makes it more like, oh, what's gonna happen? You want to see what people are gonna play on you.
Mm-hmm. And like, it adds to like replayability, and it's fun screwing with others. I personally enjoy doing that.
Yes, you do. Oh, you kick open the door, and it's like there's like a level 30 monster. You're like, uh-oh. No need to hit me with anything. I'm done.
I think what I'd like to really draw a comparison to here is dun 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 Monopoly. And yes, Kate. Yes, I just went there. Oh boy. So anyway, here's the thing about Monopoly. Monopoly is a game that was supposed to be bad. Like literally by design, it was supposed to be a teaching tool that was made by Quakers to make sure that everybody who's a Quaker knew capitalism is not entertaining. It's something that's not fair. When somebody starts to win, they just keep winning because they get more and more power, and more money, more power, and just, you end up on top and looking down. And everybody else is down and has no way of climbing up. And everybody loves Monopoly. And I think that Munchkin is largely the same idea. And the funny thing is, instead of capitalism being sort of the central joke, the joke is D&D. Steve Jackson. This is taken from an individual who knows Steve Jackson personally and has met him personally and has worked for his company in several conventions. Steve Jackson hated D&D, especially second edition, because that's where Munchkin gets most of its jokes. And so what he did is he tried to make this game that was kind of an anti-game, where the players had no control. It was just silliness of reading the cards and referential jokes to different internet comics and other D&D sort of escapades that had made the community giggle and laugh and forget about, but then he kind of brought them together in this anti-game. Like I said, anti-game, because the choices that you make are supposed to, by design, be entirely deconstructed by randomness and other players' cards that you cannot see coming. And what's happened is that has been a winning formula. Much like Monopoly was intended to show the flaws in capitalism and instead has fueled that fire, Munchkin has done the same for D&D. It gives D&D players a chance to sort of look at themselves in the mirror and see the silliness of these rules that they're arguing about. Like one of the cards in Munchkin, you flip it and it says, whine at the game master, whine at your GM, whine at your dungeon master, whine at the person who's, like running the game. And what do you get for it? You gain a level because you whined, and that just means just shut up, fine, whatever you want, just do it. Let's get back to the story, right? The whole idea is whenever you deconstruct Dungeons and Dragons into its mechanisms, it starts to sort of fall apart because players kind of game the system, quote unquote. And Munchkin is like a way of making all the ways that players game the system sort of sit in the spotlight. But it's almost been, like I said, this hugely successful parody that's taken on a life of its own. And instead of being like pointing out the negatives in D&D, it makes people that play D&D enjoy this sort of a little excursion, a self-referential, sort of romp through all of the pitfalls of D&D. Gentlemen and lady.
Finally!
Lady and gentlemen, have I in any way approximated the truth?
Well, I can definitely say most of the 90% of the enjoyment I got out of playing Munchkin was based on all the bad D&D games I was involved with. All the things that ever went bad in a Dungeons and Dragons role-playing game, I actually see them crop up in the game that was poking fun of it was very entertaining. And every time I see a group of people playing Cards Against Humanity, I just want to take Munchkin and say, look, play this instead. Because first of all, I'm not going to feel uncomfortable sitting here listening to you play Cards Against Humanity, for one.
Yeah.
And I don't know.
It starts to get to that level, though. I mean, one of the cards in the base game, we play like totally base Munchkin. One of the cards is crabs, and it's not like a picture of a crab. It's a dude who's like itching his like nether region. So it's yeah. You can't run from it. That's specifically on the card. Yeah, exactly, TC. This is what you hear TC laughing right there. That's what your Munchkin players are doing.
You can't run from the crabs.
You can't.
Nope.
Dad!
Hey, Trent, would you mind recording like an audiobook that's interspersed you reading a Munchkin card together with then you reading immediately afterwards a quote from Tuesdays with Maury?
I feel like I know what our April 1st episode is going to be.
We're gonna review Tuesdays with Maury.
We gotta like promise a extra special podcast recording, and that everybody shows up, and then I just read Tuesdays with Maury for an hour.
Oh man!
But it was Munchkin that did get Kate into gaming. I mean, I think that was one of the first games we played.
Yeah,
and
stop dissing
a lot
on
of people I do meet at game night do still play Munchkin. It's usually a good entry point for the hobby. So I can't really talk too crappy about it, because I still enjoy it. My family still enjoy it. I just take it for what it is. I don't look for any depth of strategy. I just know that we're just going to sit around and just punch each other in the face over and over and over till someone randomly wins the game.
Yes,
but
yes, and I kind of wanted to do that, and it was difficult for me to actually just do that, because there was an individual that's sitting there telling me like, come on, some people like social interaction, and just the implication that because I don't enjoy a game, I don't enjoy social interaction. Like, oh my goodness. Like, that's like me telling you, and it was said, the thing is, it was said in a very like pretentious way. It was not said like in a joking, sarcastic way. It was said in like a, no, some people enjoy social interaction. That's why they like this game. And you're not really one of those people. I don't think you get social interaction. So.
Well, then you invite, if the guy wants to play Munchkin, you say, I would play Munchkin, and you just make sure every event that comes hits that guy, and you laugh.
It'd have to be me and everybody else, because I can never draw anything. TC, you're talking to the guy who's random. Yeah, it's... It is, yeah, it was... I don't know if it was so much a Munchkin elitist. Luke asked in our comments. I don't know if he was a Munchkin elitist. I think that he saw this as a low-hanging fruit, and I just don't know... I think he saw this as something that he could maybe get me at. And I'm not really sure, man. Maybe that's just me being like this sort of like paranoid mentality. But I definitely was like, I'm the one playing Munchkin here. You're the one who's not actually playing Munchkin. You're the one who's sitting over there not playing Munchkin. Don't judge the guy who's playing Munchkin. If I dislike a game and I play it, doesn't that make me somebody who's really trying to grow the hobby? I don't know. Anyway, I'm not going to go super in depth into all the other.
Here's some advice. Next time you play Munchkin, and you're over in here, Kate. I don't know if you still have it or not. Kate used to have a Cthulhu plushie, and the Cthulhu Munchkin plushie had a tag on it that was a rule. You brought this plushie, and you got a special rule. You just sat the thing on the table, and you got a special action. So we'll give you the plushie next time you play. So it'll sit right there with you. You can do this special action, and we'll cheer you on.
Yeah.
That's how is that better or worse than the catapult and Carcassonne?
Ooh. Yeah, I would say that it is much more appropriate and fitting for Munchkin than it is for Carcassonne. That's for sure, man. You take, yeah. Imagine if they added a dexterity element to an 18xx game.
I played with the catapult expansion at Gen Con.
On purpose? Like this year?
Well, like, snarky purpose.
Oh, okay, so it was like people kind of knew.
Somebody brought like this like huge box of Carcassonne stuff they had, and they had literally everything in it. And somebody pulls out the catapult, and we're like, we're doing this.
Okay, yeah, I'm right there with you, man. That'd be pretty awesome. So, Trent, you not only went to Gen Con this year, you also went to BGG Con, and now would be the perfect time for you, sir, to tell us about the half-dozen plus games that you got an inside scoop on for the first time.
Okay, I went to BGG Con a couple weeks ago. It's a convention, for those unaware. It's a convention held in Dallas, Texas, the weekend before Thanksgiving each year. It's associated with, obviously, Board Game Geek, hence the BGG. There's typically about 3,000 people at it. That's roughly the number they had this year. I think the final count was somewhere around 2,900. And the convention's oriented really just around playing games. There isn't much else going on. The convention is largely just one large room with tons and tons of tables set up to play games, and a bunch of little side rooms that for people who want a quieter environment or are playing a really long game to play games. It's no special events. There is a dealer hall, but it's almost out of the way. Like, it's not any part of the main convention. It's all really about playing games. And one of the real perks of it is that the convention makes a special effort to get the latest releases from Essen and gets them there, and then has a section called the Hot Games table, where essentially what they do is before the convention starts, they set up 20 or 25 of the quote hottest games from Gen Con, which they decide by a vote on the site before you ever go there. And then they just are perpetually set up all the way through the convention. You go over to that area, and if there's a game available with a seat available, you sit down and play it. When the game is done, you reset the game, get up and walk away, and then someone else can sit down and immediately play it. By reset, I mean literally you reset it up like someone's getting ready to play. You don't put it back in the box. They never leave the table for 5 days. So it's a really great opportunity to get to play a lot of new Essen releases, which is part of the reason I like it. And the whole thing is just oriented around playing board games. It's not a spectacle like Gen Con. It's just about the games and about, you know, interacting with other gamers that are as excited as you are about the whole prospect. So what did I play? I had a nice list of games to play that I was going to go down there and play. And I'm going to just briefly, I'm only going to mention the ones that are new to me. The ones that I had played before were 4X, which we talked about before in the show. I played that again.
Please, Trent, I'm really sorry, man, but I want to specifically ask you to talk about that experience because I have been dying to know personally.
Okay. I played 4X with Cole Worley, who's the designer of An Infamous Traffic, John Company, and a few other games. He also did the art for 4X. He was the art designer.
Yes, it is beautiful. It is by far the best-looking game I've seen come from Hollandspiel, personally, in my opinion.
Ambi Valdez, who does some videos for the Dice Tower and a few other things. And Toby Mao, who I've played a ton of different rather heavy economic games with. And I managed to win that game. That's the amazing part out of that. 4X.
Congratulations.
Okay, so here's how it went down. Part of why I won was that I think Cole would have won, except Ambi and I basically formed a cartel around the Japanese yen. We both basically ended up with 4 shares of the yen and then refused to sell them when Toby dumped them. We held on to them and just kept ratcheting up the price. It always had the most owned. So it was the one that would keep going up every time the dividends would be paid out. The value of the yen kept ratcheting up.
4 or 5 free jumps, yeah.
And we just sat on it and kept collecting yen and collecting yen. And then if anyone else ever started to dive into a currency and was obviously making a play or is doing something with contracts, we would buy and her and I would mutually buy and sell certificates of that currency just to mess with them.
Huh.
We sat there messing with everything Toby and Cole were doing by buying other contracts that weren't the yen. We just sat on our yen. And her and I finished first and second, and it was really close. Cole went completely bankrupt because he tried to invest in a contract to catch up, and I think he might have caught up, except he miscounted a little bit and then wound up in a situation where he couldn't repay the contract when it came up. He couldn't pay for it. And then Ambi and I immediately proceeded to buy these certificates for that currency. So he had no way to get it.
Mm-hmm.
He had no way to get the currency to pay for the contract. So he just went bankrupt. He lost the game.
He ended the score with literally like a bankrupt score.
Yeah, he bankrupted.
I've never heard of that happening in 4X yet.
Well, he had a contract he couldn't pay for. He got the goods off of it, but then he couldn't pay for the contract when it came back around because all the certificates for that contract got bought, and no one else would spot trade with them.
Ridiculous, dude.
Yep.
That's
so. He went bankrupt, and that's how the game ended. And I won because I didn't have quite the most yen, but I had a ton of the second most valuable currency, which is enough for the win.
Oh man, that's crazy.
I learned a lot about how alliances work in that game. If you get one other person in you, and you just sit on a currency with 4 certificates each, the other players need to break it. They need to do something to break it.
Yeah. Oh man, that's I imagining the game. That's a crazy go at it, man. That's interesting. And every time I hear talk about 4X, I just feel like the wheels in my head start spinning now, where I'm just kind of like, what would really happen though? Because every time I start to try solving the game, quote unquote, I feel like everybody else at the table is deconstructing it. And they're trying to do all they can to stop it. And in a lot of ways, that feels like what an 18xx game is like. The impetus is on the players that are not in that situation.
Yep. It's a really interesting game. I think there's a lot going on there that it's maybe not appreciated on the first play or two, because I learned all kinds of stuff from that play.
Yeah, for
I'm
sure.
going to move on and just.
Yeah, thanks, Trent. I appreciate you.
I just want to reiterate, Cole went bankrupt. That's verified, right? Okay, I just want to verify
Friend
that.
of the podcast. Yeah, he was here to talk about that. He reviewed 4X on his last Good Board Ugly appearance.
He reviewed it, and then I bankrupted him out of it.
Okay, good.
Oh, you like this game? You're going down.
It was good fun. He was actually really enjoyed that and was very, like, I think almost had a bit of a new appreciation for 4X.
That's awesome.
I don't know. It was pretty cool. Anyway, other games that I played that I had already played before were Catacombs 3rd Edition, which I played with a guy that was really excited to play it and completely got into being a DM with it. Like, was acting it out and stuff. It was different. Yeah? That's different.
What did you think? Because this is kind of a lighter flicking game.
It was a flicking game. It was on the first day. I was just going through the hall, and there was a guy there, and he was really excited to play it and looking for another player, so I sat down.
Yeah.
I taught some people how to play Bus, and they absolutely loved it. One of the people responded to me on Twitter later and said Bus was literally his favorite game he played at BGG Con. Bus is an early splatter game that's like a prototypical worker placement game, I would say.
It's the Big Six argument, isn't it? The Splatter has 5 popular games, and this is the one that is there. Like, there's a really large contingent of individuals comparatively that think this is at the same level of quality.
I think there's a Big Six for Splatter, and Bus is the one that's often forgotten.
Okay.
I feel that way. I have a high appreciation of it. Anyway, I think that's all the ones that I had played before.
Okay.
So I'm going to go through the ones that were new. Almost all of these are SN releases. I'm not 100% positive on a couple of them, but I think almost everything I'm going to talk about is SN release. First thing I played, Nine Tiles. Sorry, not Nine Tails. Nine Tiles. It's a game from Oink Games, so it's like a really tiny box, like a fake artist goes to New York or something. And all it is each player has 9 double-sided tiles. Each side of the tile has a different image on it, like a circle or a square or something like that. You flip over a card, and then everybody that depicts 3 by 3 grid of symbols, and everybody has to take their tiles and match that picture as fast as possible. Whoever does it first claims the card. You do that until someone has claimed 4 cards. Game end.
Is it a fast game?
Very, very, very fast. It's like almost a dexterity game. You gotta it's like a mix of dexterity and pattern recognition. That's all it is. That's it. It's a very quick, great little filler game. That's all there is to it. It's one that I would be happy to throw in a game bag because it's not going to take up very much space. It's about the size of a large candy bar. That's all there is really to say about it. I am terrible at it. Okay. So we're going to move on.
Sometimes that's the allure in games.
Yeah. It's not a big hit game, but it's a nice little filler game, and I'm really terrible at it. So the next one I'm talking about, the first real SN release, is Nusfjord, which I played right after Catacombs on Wednesday morning. It's the latest UA Rosenberg worker placement game. Agricola, Le Havre, all kinds of worker placement games. This is just another one like that. There's a board that depicts a number of worker placement spots, and you do various actions on them and so on and so forth, just like any other worker placement game. So what makes this one stand out? There's a lot of variable player power involved in it. For example, in Agricola, you have the minor improvement hand, and you have the what's the other one? Occupation hand. 2 different kinds of hands of cards that you can use to upgrade your tableau. In this, you essentially also have 2 types of cards, but they're on the table, and so it's like everybody has this large mutual hand. One of the hands is identical from game to game. It's almost kind of like the major improvements in Agricola. It's probably a good comparison. But the other one is wildly variable every game. They just feel more like occupations. And you go to worker placement spots to effectively build them. And they cost different amounts of resources. They give you victory points. They all have special abilities on them. That part felt a lot like Agricola, except the cards were on the table to draft, and you got them by going on a worker placement spot. But the economics of the game are really interesting. Each round you're going fishing, and you're building basically a fleet of fishing boats. So the more fishing boats you have, the more fish you get each round. And fish are a resource. But one of the types of cards are these, like, I can't remember the term, I think it's sages. They're like old men in the village. And they eat a certain amount of fish every round. So as you draft those and have more power, each round you've got to get more and more fish to keep feeding them.
Some more overhead.
Yes, there's more overhead for having them. And so that's an interesting tug and pull. That's as close as the game gets to feeding. Okay. Is if you get too overzealous with taking the special powers, you're going to have difficulty feeding your people.
That's interesting. That almost reminds me of the Great Zimbabwe, the way that when you take these special powers, it increases your
it's a little bit. It's a little bit like that. I can see that.
Yeah,
a little bit like
it's more feeding, but yeah.
I felt it was tighter than a lot of UA's more recent games. Definitely tighter than the Caverna. There was still some sandboxy. Awesome. There were still some sandboxy elements to it, like in terms of like kind of figuring out your own path. And there wasn't. I mean, there was some pressure with needing to feed your people, because not only do you need the fish to feed your sages, and I think sages is the right term, so don't. I might not be the right word, but they're basically old guys. You also need some fish for a lot of the other things that you're doing. So fish are a very important resource. They're like, it's like as if food was an actual resource you were trying to use for other things in Agricola. It's a really good comparison. And you're getting other kinds of resources and building things. Another thing that's interesting is there's like a shared pool of fish that you use for various purposes. And like people are taking fish in and out of the shared pool of fish. And knowing when to strike when that pool is low, and knowing when to like dump fish into it to ruin other people's plans is very important. And there's various mechanisms for doing that. In order to take one of the sages, you have to pull fish out of that pool when you actually draft them. So that has some interesting give and take. It's not extraordinarily tight. It's not like Agricola tight by any means. It's less tight than Agricola. My feeling was it felt like Glass Road in terms of levels of tightness. It's not overwhelmingly tight, but you definitely end up painting yourself into a bad corner if you're not.
Well, because you're never like required to feed unless you've previously taken on that sort of responsibility. Like, yeah, it's not like Agricola where it's like, oh, hey, guess what? You're going to feed. Like it's not like you just start the game sort of in debt with this consistent need to pay it off, or to continually pay your food overhead. It's here. It sounds to me like it's a lot more at your own pace.
Yeah, you can paint yourself into a corner. Not real easy, but you can paint yourself into a corner in this. You can definitely put yourself in a situation where it's going to be harder to accumulate points. But you never feel like I'm just going to outright lose because I can't feed my people. This never gets that tight. You always feel like you can do stuff, or isn't like you're just completely hung. So it's not as tight as Agricola, but it's way tighter than like Caverna. It's somewhere in the middle. And it's also not as, I don't think it's quite as heavy as either one of them. Maybe close to Agricola with a less wacky deck.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah, that's about where I would put it. I think that I was surprised as to how little relative hype it had. There were a lot of people there that seemed to be really enjoying it. I think that maybe, if anything, he might again be reaching a point where he's slightly underrated. I don't know. But I felt like it probably deserved a little more attention than it got in terms of like the pre-S and hype. I don't know that I'd buy it, but I certainly wouldn't turn down more games of it. Okay, so let's keep moving here. The next game I played is one that Joe can comment on, and that is Gaia Project.
Oh, yeah.
Which I have now played.
Okay, now we're talking.
I have now played it 3 times in total. It's in my view, it's an almost strictly improved version of Terra Mystica.
Yep. Second.
The first time I played it, I was a little unclear on the adjacency rules because the guy explained it badly, but they're really not unclear at all. It's very straightforward. Basically, everything 2 hexes away is considered adjacent, more or less. The guy who explained it tried to make it more complicated than it was. It's not. The cultist tracks have been entirely tossed out and replaced with technology tracks.
Mm-hmm.
They're just far more interesting. They're just way more interesting, 100%, no question. They made moving up on those tracks more interesting because you're essentially investing a particular resource in it. They've done away with the witches from Terra Mystica and essentially incorporated it into things that are more interesting, honestly. The variable player powers are more interesting because they do different interesting things, particularly with the mana tokens in the pool. There's a lot more interesting things going on with those because there's a lot of effects to add more to your pool. So there's a lot more incentive to toss them out to move your tokens from pool 2 to pool 3. I'm talking to people as though they played Terra Mystica.
Yeah.
I'm kind of assuming that. But I'll just say this. If you're interested in Terra Mystica and you like Terra Mystica, this is almost strictly better than that. The only thing I can say is it doesn't play with 5 yet, but I have a feeling that will change in the future. It's only a 1 to 4 right now. Oh, it has solo rules. I forgot to mention.
Oh yeah, solo. What?
It has an Automa system, kind of like a Scythe or something like that.
Yeah.
Almost everything from that you would expect from the Fire and Ice expansion is in this box already. There's like variable player power order and stuff, and you can auction off the various powers if you want. The different powers in the box are all very, very, very different. They do all sorts of unusual things. I just love it. To me, I'm going to be honest with you, this strictly replaces Terra Mystica for me. I don't know why I would play Terra Mystica again.
Mm-hmm.
And that's saying something because Terra Mystica is one of my favorite games.
Yes. it really, like, the thing is, Trent, I feel like that's kind of what I've heard tossed around regarding Gaia Project, is that it's strictly better than Terra Mystica. And I just want listeners to understand quite how big of a deal that is. Like, you were talking about the first game that I ever really, that kind of propelled me into just even wanting to be deep into this hobby. You know, like, up until that point, I was the lurker. By the way, hi mom. I think my mom is now known as either Luke or Kyle or something. But anyway, it's just kind of, you know, check the chat if you want to understand that exactly. But they just happened to be there when I said they were my mom. It was kind of funny. Anyway, you need to understand that a lot of just how much I was interested in this hobby at all was largely a result of Terra Mystica, just the way that I saw how much depth there was in that system. And Gaia Project takes that amount of depth, adds more variability at the setup, but with somehow honing in and balancing everything. And you've got 14 brand new races, none of which can be mapped one-to-one to any of the older races. Some elements are pieced here, some are pieced there, but nothing is the same, really remotely so. Yes, some special abilities are, but in the end, really, how different are any special abilities in any game? You know, they're all going to refer to some aspect of the game and make it either better or worse. The thing is, here you've got a map that expands and contracts to player count. You have the cult track that has been totally revamped. Now you have elements of the player board, like shipping and terraforming, that are now part of the cult track. You have a totally new form of terraforming that's called Gaia forming that really does earn its name, the Gaia Project. The other elements on this cult track race, which is now a technology race, incorporate and integrate seamlessly into the game and make it feel like this is what it always should have been from the start. You've also got some sort of ultimate technologies that are going to change from game to game and give you something to shoot for. The things that you get rewarded points for. I just feel like they did a lot to clean things up that maybe frustrated some people that thought it was a great game with some flaws. And for those of us like me that couldn't even see the flaws, maybe for how enamored I was with the system, it's so crazy for me to play a game and be like, yeah, this is an improvement. This is an improvement. Everything here is better. Because I would be the first one to drag my feet to accept a new version of a game that I've played so many times and love so much. So, you know, the way that I reject Caverna, and I really hard do reject Caverna, and I'm sorry, you know, if you enjoy Caverna, I'm happy that you do. For me, it takes away the things I love about Agricola and tries to make it apply to everybody and makes it less, like, interesting to me. Here, Gaia Project takes every bit of the game I thought was interesting, turns it up a notch, maintains and conserves everything I loved about it in some capacity or another, and somehow does it all with a conversion of theme and just everything about this. Beautiful. And the plastic miniatures, you know what? They're solid. They're sturdy. I like them.
Yep.
TC.
Oh, yeah, this is the first time I ever played Terra Mystica. I was like, man, if this game was just about terraforming planets, this would be fantastic. And just the fact listening to you talk about it, and you're an alien race terraform. I'm so excited about this one. Terraforming Terra Mystica was a game that I wanted to like more than I actually did, because I liked the system and there was a lot of things about it. It was the theme that held me back. And when I heard that they were going to retheme it to space, I was like, I'm there. I just need to hear someone talk about it and sell me on it.
Yep.
Trent did that. I am, and oh yes, I can't wait. I am really excited to try this one out. Very excited.
It lets you sort of get to know these fantasy races on their own. They're not fantasy races; they're science fiction races, but none of them exactly map to things that I would have had a sort of trope to go to. Whereas in Terra Mystica, everything seems kind of tied to tropes, which in essence helps with how intuitive it feels. But at the same time, you don't really get to know the race by playing it. You just have an idea of what to expect, right? Here, you learn about each race in the playing of them. And I felt like on turn 2 or 3, I was like, holy crap, I actually get how these guys work now, and I get how they work because of all the mistakes I made. But
yeah, and the map that changes with player count, that because another problem I had with Terra Mystica was that with lower player counts, it was a vastly different game than with more players, because a lot of the strategy, and if I remember right, was you want to get close to people but not too close. The map that adjusts that seems pretty interesting.
Absolutely. Well, Trent, thanks for giving me a chance here to interject. But yes, I loved it. I could not believe it.
Okay, so we'll move on from there. I obviously really liked Gaia Project. I want to talk about the next game I played. This is still just on Wednesday of BGG Con. It's Riverboat. Riverboat's the newest game by Michael Kiesling. Beautiful Clemens Franz artwork. It's supposed to be published by Mayfair Games, but if you've been following the news, it appears that Mayfair Games may have gone out of business. So I don't really know when this will be published in the U.S.
Oh.
Yeah.
Apparently, you guys weren't aware of this.
Well, that's interesting. I know that they lost. Caton's not published by Mayfair in America anymore, is it?
Nope,
I know there was
the Asmodee beast.
Yeah, I was wondering how that was going to impact them.
I don't. No one seems to really know what's going on with that. There was some. They had a booth there at BGG Con, and the people there were like, "We're very much of the we're not going to have a job soon." So I got this. There was a very strong impression, and I heard this from a lot of people, that Mayfair is just gone. So I don't know how true that is. That's rumor, but I gotta say, as Riverboat may or may not be published in the U.S. for a while, I don't really know. But I will say it's a pretty interesting game. It reminded me of a mix, and here's where this will either intrigue you or turn you off. It reminded me of a mix of Puerto Rico and Kingdom Builder. You have these like tiles.
That sounds awesome.
Okay, you have these tiles. Essentially have tiles that you're drafting, and they're a lot like it's a draft a lot like the roll tiles in Puerto Rico. You know, when you draft the things and they give you a special ability, but everybody gets to do a simpler version of it. There's essentially 5 of these, and because each round there's 5 phases, and I'm not going to go into specifically what they are, but the 5 tiles each gives you a way better ability during one of those phases, and you draft those. Okay, so what you're essentially doing in the game is there's 8 cards that are flipped up each round. Everybody has their own little board. It has a bunch of different terrain types on it. The board looks like a smaller version of a Kingdom Builder board, but it's just for you. As these colors come up, you're going to be placing your workers on the board wherever you want on whatever color comes up. So it's a lot like Kingdom Builder, where you have a card, you play it, you have to put your dudes on that type. Except in this, 8 cards come up, and you see the first card, everybody has to place on that type on their own board. Second card, everybody has to place on that type on their own board. Third card, fourth card, fifth card, so on. In this, you don't have to place adjacent. That's not a strict rule, but you're going to really, really, really want to place adjacent. And that means you're going to have to think about where you're going to place that puts you adjacent to other land types so that you have a good chance of building the kind of shapes you want on your board. Because different shapes that you make, different arrangements, are going to be worth more points. Also, So you're putting these workers on the board and these terrain types. They're essentially farmers. Then you've got to draft plots of land for them, which are represented by these other tiles that are out there. You go through a round where you're essentially drafting these plots, putting them on your board, and replacing the farmers when you put them on there. Eventually, that's representing them cultivating the land. So you're looking at what's going to be available in the tile offering and thinking about where you want to put your guys. And then there's also farm buildings that you're going to be placing on there. And you're going to want to like completely encircle the farm buildings. So you're going to want to make a circle of 6 hexes around a farm building. And so there's a lot of that kind of spatial reasoning going on throughout the kingdom builder like exercise of putting your guys on there. It comes together really interesting. There's also these variable player powers that you draft, and that part actually reminded me of Great Western Trail a little bit, I think is how I would describe it. There's like this, you spend some of the resources you've accumulated to buy these tiles, and the more you spend, the better they are, but then you're investing just in one tile. And there's a lot of interesting bits going on, and the game fits together pretty well. This is a game I thought I had a hard time judging it from the one play because there was one of the players I played with had played it like 4 or 5 times before and just smoked us. So it kind of, I mean, it was hard for me to give it a completely fair shake because I felt like I was just getting destroyed by someone that knew what they were doing and we were just learning it.
Yeah, that can be a little bit.
I really wanted to play it again. So I don't. I liked the game. It was hurt. I felt like this is a game I would have really, really, really liked with 4 new players, and because I kind of just went down to really like because there was one player there that was just destroying all of us, and very proud of his efforts in beating new players. So yeah. So this is a game I definitely want to play again. I did manage to pick up a copy of this. This is one of the ones I picked up, and looking forward to playing it some more. You've
interested me quite a bit here.
Huh?
I'm quite interested.
Okay, so that's basically Riverboat. If that type of thing sounds interesting to you, go for it. Like I said, my initial takeaway was that it reminded me of a mix of Puerto Rico and Kingdom Builder. So we'll take it from there. I'm flipping through my little pocket notebook here that I took notes in. Clans of Caledonia, I played for the first time this evening. I believe that's been fairly well covered on this podcast before, but I played it for the first time down there. So yeah, I played Gaia Project and Clans of Caledonia the same day, so I got my Terra Mystica revision on.
What did you think about Clans?
I think that it just simply took Terra Mystica in a little different direction. It had some. I think overall, I'd rather play Gaia Project.
Okay, I think I would too. It's definitely more one. If I was going to teach new players. Could you see teaching new players Clans before Gaia? Because that's at least what I think.
I think so. I think you could teach new players Clans easier than Gaia Project. I think if you had experienced economic gamers, that Clans would probably be more interesting because of some of the manipulation you could do of the various values of the goods and things. But I wasn't a big fan of just like the random production of contracts that you may or may not be prepared for. I was also frustrated in the game, and I didn't figure this out until the end. The people I were playing with was not understanding that the income they got from placing the meeples on the board, like the mountain people and the forest people.
Yeah.
So underneath them, when you put them on the board, it would give you a sum of the amount of income you're supposed to get.
They thought it was cumulative.
Yes, and so they were getting huge fistfuls of money, and I was not.
Overpowered for that's wrong. That's totally wrong. That's not the right.
Yeah, I was like, how are these people just burning through everything like this? How is this even happening? And then the last round, I saw what they were doing. It's like, well, I get $72 in income. It's like, how are you getting $72 in income?
Yeah, that's not right.
Yeah, so that was a game number 2 that was probably somewhat softened by playing with people that were
playing it wrong.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll move on. Okay, so I went to bed and I slept in way too late the next morning because I stayed up late talking to people after Clans of Caledonia. So the next day I got up and about noon I played Azul, which is a light little puzzle. I'd say it's almost abstract-y game. Really, really nice components. Everybody kept calling it the Starburst game because the pieces looked like Starburst candies that you're playing with, and they almost kind of felt like them too. Basically, it's just a puzzle game. It's an abstract game where you're drafting, but everything is visible. All the draft elements are visible. There's In a 4-player game, there's 9 little pools for you to draft from. And you're essentially choose one of the pools and then take all of the tiles of a particular color out of that pool, and then all the other ones get swept into the middle. And then all the tiles in the middle become their own separate drafting pool. You can draft from there instead. So I might take 2 blue tiles off of one of the pods, and the other 2 that remain on there get swept in the middle. And then someone else might choose one of the outer pods, and their remaining ones get swept in the middle. Eventually, the pool in the middle will get pretty good, and people will draft from there instead. So you're putting these tiles on your board, and you're essentially solving a puzzle with them, is what you're doing on them. You have these rows on the board. You have a grid of a 5x5 grid that you're supposed to be eventually placing the tiles you draft on, except in order to place a piece in the first row, you have to have drafted 1 of that color. To place a piece in the second row, you had to have drafted 2 of that color. To place a piece in the third row, you have to have drafted 3 of that color, and 4 and 5, and so on. And there's places to sit them on the board, and then at the end of the round, once you basically go through each row, and if you have enough of a particular type of the same color for that row, then you get to place a piece. And so what you're doing is you're trying to visualize how this is going to be arranged, because you're not supposed to have the same pieces of the same color and the same row or column on your grid. So there's a little bit of like spatially figuring out where you want to put everything a little bit. You have to do a fair amount of spatial reasoning, think through it logically, because the scoring is all about having pieces in the same row and the same column. But as I just said, you can't have pieces of the same type in the same row or the same column. They have to all be different. So it's just all a spatial reasoning thing is what it is. You're trying to like figure out where to put sets of different things. And this is all with an open-ended drafting. Now it sounds like, well, that's pleasant and all. What I've learned is every time I've played this is that the draft gets really mean. Really, really, really mean. Because you can't say, no, I'm not drafting. Near the end, you have to take something. And if you have overflow, like let's say the only thing you can take is 3 tiles of a particular color and it doesn't really fit anywhere on your board, boom, you get a bunch of negative points. They go completely to waste and you get negative points. So if you're hung with some tiles that don't fit for you, you get negative points and you get nothing out of it. People notice that and they will draft accordingly. Like they'll take something that's really mediocre for them over something that's slightly better for them just to hang you with a bunch of negative points. So it's a nasty, mean drafting game that's tied into like a puzzle-y abstract. But
so, what's your thought? Was it one that you want to keep playing, or?
Yeah, it's one that this screams a game that my family would like.
Okay, I was gonna say that almost sounds like something that'd be perfect for you and Sarah. Yeah. You know, the old. Here you go, Trent. Enjoy.
Yeah, and honestly, my older children too. Abstracts are big around here. This type of spatial reasoning is the type of thing my kids really enjoy. The pieces are really nice. This is a family game for me, my family. I think it would work well and very well on game nights for those who like those types of elements in their games. Pieces look really pretty. It's the kind of game where you want to go up and you almost want to touch the pieces because they look so nice. And that's Azul. There's not too much to say. It plays about half an hour. It's not real long. All right, we'll move on from there. One of my favorite games that I played there was the next one I played, which was Noria, which is coming out in a few months from Stronghold Games. It was literally not available at the con as far as I could tell. I don't know what the deal was, but I'm guessing it may have taken some manufacturing difficulty because this is a rondel building game. So you have this like 3-tiered rondel that you have in front of you. And the first level has, I have to think for a minute. The first level, I think, has 2 slots on it. The second level has 4 slots, and the third level has 6 slots. And at the end of each round, you're essentially rotating your rondel, each gear of it, so that you have a different set of choices each round. So it's almost hard to visualize it, but the top rondel basically does a 180, and the next level does like a 90-degree turn, and then the bottom level does a 60-degree turn. But what that effectively does is when you're actually rotating them, is it creates a different permutation of choices each round. The options you have available are different each round. You start with pieces on this rondel in each of these slots, just a couple pieces. But throughout the game, you're buying more things to literally put on your rondel that's turning, your discs or whatever. So you'll get more options of actions to do each round. You set them up so that eventually the gears will turn, and line up so that you have a whole bunch of options this one turn is really great. Or you can just try to fill up all the slots equally and not not upgrade the tile, so that you're always doing something every round, but maybe it's not great. So you have a lot of different things you can do. So what you're doing with this game is essentially you're building an economic engine, is what your rondelle is actually supposed to do. You have a bunch of different possible action pieces you can put in your rondelle. Some of those action pieces are literally just to improve your rondelle, but most of the rest of them are to play around with this economic game that's going on. You're essentially building a factory to make widgets that, storyline-wise, are about building an airship or some nonsense. I don't really know. But basically,
sounds like
it's
a
an
great
economic
thematic game.
Well, I mean, the art's all over the place and stuff, but basically, me being a fairly economic gamer, that's what I latched onto. I barely noticed the theme. The art's great, and I'm sure people would get into it, but this is an economic game, is what it is. It's got this weird gear rondelle that feels Euro-y when you first glance at it, but it's an economic game. You're using all of this to build an economic engine, is what you're doing. You're building a set of factories, you're collecting resources so that you can run these factories to produce particular types of goods. Then you spend these goods to move up in a number of markets. Like basically you're buying shares in a particular type of good. I don't know. It's like, I think the best way to describe it is there's 4 companies. Each of these companies is interested in a particular type of good. So you're essentially selling these goods to move up on that track. However, this is where the game gets really interesting and really nasty. As another one of the actions you can do is determines how valuable each of those tracks are going to be. At the start of the game, they all have a particular value that they're going to have, right? One of the tracks will have each track has a little row next to it. It says like 0, 1, 2, 4, 8, 16 or something like that. And there's no markers on it at all, but there's 6 little squares next to it, little cubes that you've got. One of the actions you can take is to put a cube over the 0. So then all the pieces on that track are worth 1 per step. So every step up you're on that track is worth 1. So one of the things you might do is move that cube over so that the 0 is covered up and all of them are worth 1. Next time you might move the cube over to cover up the 1, so now all steps are worth 2. And then you might move the cube over later to make it so all steps are worth 4. Sounds straightforward, right? There's another action you can take one of the cubes that hasn't been used yet and throw it out of the game. So someone's trying to move up on the track and make it valuable, and then some other guy goes and chucks the cubes so that you can never get it to be particularly valuable.
It sounds to me like one where you can interact with each other, which is nice.
Yes, it's very interactive, very, very, very interactive. There's no doubt about that. It's really interactive. It's very mean if you don't expect it. If you like high interaction economic games, you're going to like this. It's got that weird rondelle thing, which feels almost like a Euro element splashed right in the middle of it. But this felt like an economic game to me. It felt like I was building a factory, using the resource from that factory to buy shares in a company, and then other people were manipulating the market to move the shares of the value of those shares up and down.
That's cool, man. A game with shares, all these things that you're saying sound to me like it's just a totally modern game, and I don't want to like try to make this somewhat unrelated topic the centerpiece, but isn't this game designed by a female game designer?
Yes, her name is Sophia Wagner.
That is so cool. Like, yeah, I couldn't do this type of thing. I'm thrilled whenever anybody can do it, and the fact that this would be one of the first, really heavy sort of, not just necessarily heavy, but like, like a modern and intense interactive Euro designed by a female designer. To me, I really want to play it.
Okay, she was awarded a Spiels des Jahres fellowship a few years back, which basically is a program that the Spiels des Jahres started several years ago to basically fund completely independent game designers that had interesting ideas but hadn't really had the time or resources to do anything with it. And this is kind of the first real game that's come out of that program, and it's pretty good. I went to the Stronghold website and pre-ordered it at the con because I didn't have any copies. I wanted to grab this one immediately. So
pretty high praise.
I was really impressed with it. And you'll notice I'm saying a lot of positive things about games of this, because my feeling is that there were a lot of very good games this year, but there wasn't like one central game that was like the mega hype. There were just a lot of good games, and because none of them was like the one game, there wasn't anything, or there wasn't one or two main games that really stood out. It kind of maybe felt like an off year to some people.
More of a refinement year than like a kaboom year.
Yeah, there wasn't anything that was like, wow, this is new and amazing. There were just a lot of good games. But they weren't all good, and we'll get there. We'll get there, don't you worry.
Oh boy. Now, I got my
I
grab my
have,
popcorn
I have
now.
something coming I'm just going to take a dump on, don't worry.
Oh boy.
Okay, so then that evening I played Gandhi, which was a prototype of the next upcoming coin game.
I doubt this is going to be the dump.
No, it's not. This is...
Yeah, my wife was I came home from work today, and Chris is like, I want a new coin game. I'm like, ooh, I gotta ask Trent about Gandhi. So please, I'm very curious about this one.
Gandhi is taking place during the period right after World War II, in which Gandhi was involved in the... Basically, the whole period of that time was trying to figure out what India was going to be as they pushed out the British and figured out their own political system. That's the period in time, like late 40s, early 50s India is the time period we're going for here. So this is the best way I can describe it is a lot of coin games end up feeling like they have a 2-on-2 mechanism. Like you're essentially playing their two factions battling against two factions. I got the strong feeling of this. This is designed from the ground up to be a 3-on-1 coin game. Everybody versus the British. Because the British have a ton of advantages. They have huge amounts of resources that they can spend and spread over the map really quickly. It feels like they can do everything. So the other three factions really have to spend the early game keeping them in check. They have to work together to do this. Which actually, from what I've read at this time, it was fairly historical. That's kind of what Gandhi did, is he got a bunch of little factions that normally would never work together to, at least for a little while, work together for the common goal of kicking out the British. Now, that fell apart pretty quickly once the British were gone, but I think that part of it is at least historical, and it made it very interesting. The most experienced player played the British. He said that he had not played the British yet, and he wanted to. And he ended up winning the game, but it was... Everybody, at some point or another, was over their victory point target and had to be knocked down. But to keep the British guy from winning, the other players did definitely have to cooperate, because the British player was more consistently getting there. And a lot of it was we didn't necessarily know what was going to happen with the cards and things like that. So familiarity, I think, will fix that. I think the coin games almost always reward everybody being roughly the same familiarity with the game. I think if you have one guy that has all the cards memorized, he's always going to have a huge advantage. But that's my feeling on the system. I really like this one. I haven't had a coin game yet that I really, I guess, I disliked. This one's quite good. I felt like the cards were fun and interesting. Some of the things that they did. It felt like you really wanted to use the events. Some of the coin games, the powers on the cards aren't all that great, so you just use them for general action points. Or whenever you use them as a generic action, rather than you always kind of felt like you wanted to use the events here, because the events were always doing pretty powerful things and interesting things on the board. It was a good game. Definitely a worthy coin game. The person that was playing it said he has played it as it was tested, and he says it is definitely improved, and it's now one of his favorites.
That's very encouraging. It sounds like they're getting back to the Andean Abyss, because that one was very 3-on-1. Because if you played the government in Andean Abyss, the government could quash anything. It was just a matter on prioritizing who you needed to beat down. So that sounds very encouraging. That sounds very encouraging indeed.
One more fun thing about this: Gandhi's literally on the board as a meeple. I don't know whether or not that's. I mean, he'll actually be a meeple in the final published version. But Gandhi's actually a character that moves around on the board and does various things. He's like a massive super unit for Gandhi's faction. He's just like, you're in this section, and all of a sudden they've got tons and tons of dudes running around. And that faction basically can't fight, but obviously it's Gandhi. But
yeah,
they can do various things. We kept joking that there ought to be a card in it that allows Gandhi to launch a nuke in honor of Civilization, the computer game, but that won't be in the game. Okay, anyway. I quite liked it. So let's get on to the next day. Okay, I played Wildcatters twice during the convention. Okay. I guess it's probably appropriate to talk about this because it's a very recent reprint. Although the original version came out years ago, this is a reprint, and they have changed some of the rules. And from what I've talked about with several people that have played it before, is like the rules changes are almost strictly improvements. Wildcatters is like it's an economic game. That's what it is. It's an economic area. It's a mix of economic and area control is basically what you've got going on the board. What you're trying to do is you're trying to put claim oil fields for yourself, convert them into pumps that are pumping oil out of the ground, and they need to be transported to a refinery and then removed from the. And at the end of the round, all 4 refineries are emptied. The thing is, different players are buying different parts of that pathway. So like you might have a pump jack, but the only way to get to a refinery to sell the barrel is via someone else's train, so you have to pay them. And then once they get to that refinery, it might be owned by a third player, and they're going to get a fair chunk of the profits there as well. If this is sounding like Container, it's because that felt like Container. That felt like Container to me, that whole part of it. So you think, well, you have the opportunity to build a network entirely for yourself, but as I learned, that's not necessarily a good way to win, because it usually means you focused a whole bunch of your resources in one section of the board, and if you don't have the opportunity, the game's run by a deck of cards that depict different regions of the board, like North America, South America, Asia, Europe, so on like that. And as those cards come up off of this deck into like a drafting row, and on your turn, you draft one of the cards out of that row, and then you only get to operate in that region. So if cards don't come up your way and you've invested a bunch in a region, you're kind of out of luck. You need to diversify in the game, at least somewhat. And so what that means is you're probably going to have to use other players and decide whether or not you're going to use their network or not. The interesting part of this game is that there is no money in the game. All money that's exchanged is in form of shares. So like the blue player, there's blue shares floating around. They're essentially the blue player's resources. And there's a yellow player and a green player and a red player. A lot of times when you want to use other people's stuff on your turn, you have to pay them in your own shares. If you use other people's stuff on other people's turns, you have to pay them in your own shares. On your own turn, you have to use workers. There's like workers you accumulate, like dozens of them, and spend them. But it's like another resource as well. But the funny part is there are other expenses in the game. So you're going to be collecting shares from other players of their color as they use your stuff, and then you spend them for like these tiles that essentially produce more shares for you of any color that you want. But to get those tiles, you have to spend complete sets of colored shares. So you have to collect shares from everybody to really win at this game. Part of this game is collecting like 2 shares from blue, 2 shares from yellow, 2 shares from green, and 2 shares of my own because I'm red. And then at the end of my turn, I can buy one of these tiles that gives me resources each round. And you really need those to do it. So you've got to, it's essentially a cooperative game, kind of like Container is. I'm trying to think of the name of the game. It involves you almost required to work together to do well at this. And it's a lot of fun. It's a game that's better learned from someone that knows it rather than the rule book. I learned that the hard way. If you actually this is a game that really needs to be taught by someone that's either read the rule book a bunch of times or has played it before, because it's not an easy one to learn from the rule book. At least I found. You might be able to kind of get it mechanically, but in terms of like what you're supposed to be doing, what the idea is, and like how to play it well, learning it from someone else is a lot better. However, I thoroughly enjoyed the game. I thought it was a very, very fun economic game. Some kind of area control-ish elements to it. It's a really solid game. And I gotta say, the Capstone's Games version is beautiful. It really did a nice job with the components. That's about all I gotta say about Wildcatters. I played it twice. It was the only game I double dipped on at BGG Con. I feel like I may have left something out, but I can't remember. I'm looking through my notebook. I feel like I forgot a game, but I don't know what it is. I'm not going to worry about it. I spent all of one day playing 18 USA, which is 1817 on a larger variable map. I spent 11 hours playing this. There were
11 hours?
Yeah, it's 11 hours.
Wow.
There was a fair amount of people short selling stock. It's something you can do in it. You essentially take a negative share of stock in that company. And then if they make a profit, if that company like pays out, then you actually, instead of getting money, you have to pay that amount to the bank out of your personal treasury. And then later on, if you decide that you don't want to be doing this anymore, you can pay the current share value of it and get out of this. It's a good way to forcibly tank another stock in the game, is essentially what you're doing. It's a good thing to do if you think a stock is overvalued, and it happened to me very badly, but what they didn't realize is I was sitting there and had a plan of what to do with this company already. I was like, okay, you can all short sell it. I really don't care. And then I almost bankrupted someone because they had short sold me so hard. It's interesting. I'd play it again, but again, you need 11 hours to play it. It's not a first 18xx game, not at all. And we'll move on from there. I'm sure Andy would ask more, but we're going to move on from there because I feel like my voice is slipping. So I'm going to move on to the game I played at BGG Con that I really disliked, and that is Merlin. Merlin is published by Queen Games. It's designed by Stefan Feld. It was easily my least favorite game I played at BGG Con. In this game, you're moving you have a action token that's essentially moving around a circular board. Every spot on this board is an action of some sort. You roll dice. It tells you how many spaces you can move your little guy around the board. And you take an action when you land on that spot. So you have 3 dice. You decide which one you want to use this round. You move that many spaces. You do the action there. The actions do all kinds of crazy stuff. But what I didn't like about this is the massive amount of random draw in it. Because as far as I'm concerned, and my experience in having watched people play this game and then playing it myself, is that different draws of the random card draw, and of the random tile draw that occurs in this game just completely can decide the game. Like, it doesn't even matter what people are doing. The randomness can just decide the game. The thing I found particularly onerous is this. There's this, you're supposed to be defending your little kingdom against invaders. And every 2 rounds, you draw 3 new invaders that you're supposed to be defending against. And they come in one of 6 different colors, and you draw them at random. So you need to get a shield against each of the colors that you draw in order to defend against it. However, if you get them all 3 in the same color, all you have to do instead of worrying about the shields at all, you just go get a black flag and they're all dead. It doesn't matter. And so instead of getting 3 things, you only need to go get 1 if you happen to get a lucky draw. So this happened to me twice in the game. So what compounds this is suddenly you've got essentially what amounts to 2 more actions with which to do other things going on in the game. The other players who are having to worry about 3 different colors of shields, well, you only have to worry about 1 flag. Okay, you just get 2 extra actions because of a random tile draw. That seems completely fair and legitimate in a game where you've only got like 3 actions per round and there's only 6 rounds in the game. Suddenly you've got 2 bonus actions. If that happens twice in the game, you've got 4 bonus actions. That's a game-deciding amount of actions. Another thing you're trying to do in this game is each round you have the opportunity to resolve a goal card for some amount of victory points. These goal cards there's a market offering of them, and you can also draw one off the top. It's like Ticket to Ride, except that if you've got these extra bonus actions, as I did in this game that I was playing, it's much easier for you to get all the resources you need to fulfill these contracts. And it doesn't use up the resources to score a contract. It just, do you have these 3 things? If yes, you can discard this card, get so many victory points, and draw 1 to replace it. The thing is, if you've already not having to worry about your the monsters attacking you because you're doing the flag thing and you've got bonus actions, you can use those bonus actions to just get almost all the resources. Then what happens is when you're drawing those random cards off the top, suddenly everything you draw just is automatically scored. That's not true for the other players because they're having to worry about getting all these shields that they've got to use to defend their territory. They can't do this. They can't just ignore it. And that just seemed terrible to me. It's like if somebody just gets lucky with a random tile draw, then the game.
I agree with you that the way that the black tile works, because I think that it'd almost be better if that black, because you're talking about a specific special ability tile, and the way that it's worded is you get to kill all of the invaders of a specific color, and because you're drawing 3 and exactly 3 random ones, if you're 3 different colors, inherently that black tile is going to be less valuable than if you've got 3 in the same, which is like I think the best situation. But frequently, like for us, I don't think it ever happened where somebody had 3 of the same. It was you had 2 and 1, or maybe 1, 1, 1. I can see, Trent, that aspect of the game with the way the black one works. I feel like if the black one was just simply a wild and not a kill everything in that color, it would work a lot more fair. Does that sound right?
Yes. I got this strong feeling that this wasn't tested out as much as it should have been. And I say that because games where you can just, a random draw decides the game that strongly. And I mean, like, I doubled up the score of the next closest person, and I'm not claiming that I was good at this game at all. I doubled up someone else's score because random draws just set me up for it.
Well, and you're right. It is that random tile draw with what you're explaining. Like, it takes several actions, and you only get, what, a total of 8 actions in a round generally?
You get 4 per round. You essentially get 8 per round, and there's 3 rounds, or depending on how you look at it, 4 per round.
Or 4 and 4, yeah. So 8 actions, and you're essentially getting 2 free actions additional to everybody else. And I totally get where you're going with that. I did think, to say some things positive about the game, I think the randomness can be strong, but I definitely think there's some interesting decisions, like the way that it's like a rondelle, where the amount of movement you get is fixed to these dice, but the order you play it in is different, and there are abilities that let you change them. That to me was kind of cool. It was like a round table element. And you could, of course, like manipulate your position on the round table, and there was this publicly moved piece that I thought was interesting. You're building things on a board that's way, way, way less interesting than, say, Castles of Burgundy. Ultimately, it did a few things different and interesting, but it was about on the same weight as Castles of Burgundy. And I think you mentioned this before, Trent, that like if there's a game that's like Castles of Burgundy, like I need to ask myself, when would I get it out instead of Castles of Burgundy? And that's what kind of made Merlin to me a little bit less than something I would necessarily seek out. However, I did appreciate some of the elements here. I thought it was a pleasant enough design, though in my game, nothing ever happened like what you're describing. At most, somebody got a free action, and it was never something that I think anybody really looked at. We were all just trying to understand the game because we were learning it for the first time, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I witnessed another game where almost the same exact thing happened, and then there were other people kind of grumbling about this at the con.
Just house rule, that black one can only kill 1 at most. It's wild, essentially, which already makes it strong. But like the fact that it's wild and can kill all of a color, that is way OP, especially compared to like the fact that the other special abilities are not that good.
Well, yeah, the thing is, it's not way OP. It's only way OP if the random tile goes your way. And then it becomes so OP that like it swings the game.
It like adds almost like a critical success to the game.
Yes. Yep. And I found that really.
There's no place for that in a Euro game. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, TC. There's no place for that in a Euro game.
No,
it's
I agree with that.
Yeah, I know you love your critical hits, man. But crits in a Euro game, like they make the whole game go off the rails.
One last game I'm going to mention. I did play this in a late prototype at Gen Con, but I played the final version here. And that was Pulsar 2849, which is the newest game from CGE. It's a dice drafting game. It's basically you're moving around a board and you're creating these little rings. I think they're called, I assume they're called pulsars because that's the name of the game. But you're essentially moving around the board and with these dice that you're drafting. Every time you draft a die, you can do several different things with it. Move your spaceship around on the board, and it's like a network map. Or there's a number of things you can do with each die. You can buy technologies with it or other things. But the core mechanic of the game is you're moving a spaceship around the board and you're landing on planets as you go around. When you land on planets, you get some sort of nice special effect. When you land on these pulsars, which look like big stars, you're essentially putting a ring on them. And then with other actions, you're buying a way to upgrade that ring. And then once the ring is upgraded, it generates victory points each round for you. There's this giant shared tech tree where basically the first person to spend their die to get a tech, like spend a 3, and you can put your token here and you have this technology for the end of until the end of the game. There's another way you can spend the die. And so on. There's a lot. The thing is, overall, it's a very straightforward game. It doesn't sound that interesting. It's little bits of how they do the different things that make it interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Like, so say there's 4 players in the game. Essentially what happens is 9 dice are rolled. And what you do is you find the median die of all of those. So like, let's say you roll 3 1s, 3 3s, and 3 6s. For example, the median die in that would be a 3. So what you do is, that's where you put this little arrow. Okay, so then what you do is you go through and draft all the dice that you want, or you do a snake draft for the dice. And then if you choose one that's below the median, so you choose a 1, it's inherently not as good. But you get to move up on a couple different tracks 2 spaces because you're 2 spaces away from where the median was. If you're drafting the 6s, they're going to be amazing for stuff you can do in the game. But you have to, and when you draft them, you have to move back 3 spaces on these tracks. There's 2 different tracks that you're moving forward and backward on. One of them is the turn order track, which is going to determine when you can draft the die and then also when you get to use the dice. And the other track is one that gives you these engineering cubes that are worth a bunch of points at the end of the game for goal scoring. So the way this game has 3 goals that are sitting out there that everybody's trying to achieve. By achieving the goal, you get a couple victory points. What you do is you unlock a tree of more points that's dependent on how many of these engineering cubes you've gotten. So if you just ignore the track where that earns you engineering cubes, that's probably not the wisest move in the world. Because if you don't have many at the end of the game, you can't score a lot of points on those, a lot of those end-game victory points. You're losing out on those. The technologies that you can pick are interesting. There's a lot of dice modification things going on in this game. You're often not stuck with the die you draft, especially later on because of the technologies. And because you can buy these tiles that essentially let you modify a die roll. The nice thing is the modifiers usually just cost 1, so they're a really good way to use a 1 if you draft it. You might end up drafting a 1 to move up 3 spaces on a track, and then you just get a modifier to make another roll better. So it has a lot of nice little interesting little pieces that fit together nicely. The thing that I really was impressed with by this game is literally everything about it is modular. It's like Voyages of Marco Polo in terms of like how you're almost changing the entire setup every single game. All the in-game goals are different. All of the technologies are different. The entire tech tree changes. And the tech tree is modular, so you might have pieces of a tech tree you've seen before and other pieces that you haven't in a different order. All the abilities of the planets that you fly to on the board, they're face-down tiles, but it's like Voyages of Marco Polo, in that when you get to them, you get some sort of special ability. They're completely randomized. It felt like someone wanted to build a dice drafting game, but also really liked Marco Polo. So if that sounds interesting to you, this is definitely going to be right up your alley. I quite enjoyed it. Like I said, it reminded me a lot of Marco Polo because of how variable everything was and how the game could feel different when you play it each time. I think there are definitely setups of this that encourages like you to fly around the board a whole bunch. There are other ones that encourage you to do all sorts of different things, like get a bunch of rings on the board. And it depends on the setup and what's going on and what drafty dice is going to change what your objective are in the game, just like Marco Polo. I liked it. It's about Marco Polo weight. I think people that like Marco Polo will like it. And that's pretty much all I have to say about it. And I don't really have any other games to mention, other than to say that my teammate or my roommate at BGG Con, his favorite game of the entire convention was Altiplano. That's about all I got to say.
You're muted.
Yes, I am. TC, that is, yes. I was just talking to myself. I just wanted to collect my thoughts. Yeah, I've been talking for at least 30
I was
seconds.
confused there for a minute too. So
yeah, I am very interested.
It was fun just watching you go, though. I should have just had commentary.
Next time, just be like, I wonder how long Joe's going to sit there and mouth words before he turns his mute button off. So,
well, I was looking down at my notebook during a lot of this. So like I just like didn't hear anything, and I finally looked up. I was like, "Am I on mute? Is there something wrong?"
I was just enjoying the show.
Well, I'm very interested in these games, Trent. I look forward to playing them. Pulsar 2049 and the Kingdom Builder one. What's it? What crap?
Riverboat.
Yeah, Riverboat. That sounded very, very interesting. So together with some other ones we've talked about in the past. So very cool
500 Gandhi right now.
There you go. So thanks, Trent.
My roommate's favorite game was Altiplano. I really wanted to mention that. I did not get to play it. Altiplano is basically apparently a remix of Orleans. I have not played it. I think the art looks really fun.
Yeah.
There's a giant multicolored llama on the box.
Llama, yep. It looks like it was. It looks like it almost belongs in like Freedom and Freeze's, like, because it's like very green. It looks like it belongs.
This was a guy. The guy that really liked it, my roommate there, is a guy that was kind of met on Orleans. So I don't know what to even make of that.
So that could be me, because I was not a huge fan of Orleans. That was all right.
He said Altiplano was his favorite game he played there. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of that. Other people told me that they really didn't like Altiplano. I don't know. I want to play it though. So he was a big fan. That was his number one game was Altiplano. I told him I would mention that on the podcast.
All right. Well, mission accomplished there, Trent. Thank you, sir. And that was an awesome recap there of BGG Con. And I think
I got one more question for Trent. Did you do the L5R tournament?
Yes, I did the L5. Well, they ended up deciding by vote whether or not to have a tournament or just have like a game day. And they voted to have it just like a game day where everybody that played a certain number of games got cards. So basically, they just had, I don't know, there's probably 40 people total, with 30 people being in the room at any given time because people rotated in and out. It went for about 6 hours ish. I saw lots of people playing Scorpion. The thing I remember is I seemed like half the room was playing Scorpion. So
he's like, no, I can swim's coming. No, that's not going to happen. How'd you do?
I was about 50-50 in the games I played. Give or take. I had to leave in the middle to go help my roommate with something, so I didn't play as many as I could have, but I was about 50-50. I played Crane. I'm pretty much Crane. Pretty much where I'm at.
Cool. Okay, I was just wondering how you did and how big of a show it had at BGG. So I had a pretty decent showing up there.
Yeah. We got a large room on one of the higher floors, like 10th or 11th floor. We just took over a large room with L5R for 6 hours.
Wow, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, nice. Well, thank you, Trent. Now let's move on to hype and closing out this episode. I'd just like to say that I'm a huge fan of Martin Wallace games, and I've got one of his earlier designs called Liberté that's all about the French Revolution. It involves card play and elections, and it just looks to me like to be a very unique take on an extremely turbulent time in history, and I'm looking forward to it quite a bit. So Martin Wallace is kind of got an extremely unique and very intricate, yet somehow, while being intricate and simplistic at the same time, he just makes this really central concept of a specific historical event come across in a way I'm not used to seeing in other games. A lot of times they get lost in the details. Martin Wallace makes sure he's focused, and I really love that about his game. So I'm really looking forward to Liberté. TC, could you tell us a bit about what you're looking forward to, which may or may not be Twilight Imperium 4? You just take it whatever direction you want.
I just need to make a public service announcement about Twilight Imperium 4th Edition, and it's something that I haven't
kind of a teaser too, right?
Well, how can I say this politely? It's like getting TI4 is a better game than 3rd edition. It's more streamlined. I like the changes. We played half a game just to get the rules down, and it went a lot smoother than the 3rd edition with all the expansions. However, much like buying a new car and being excited about it, and you finally get the car home and you realize like there's a little scratch underneath some place that doesn't really matter, but it bugs you because there's a scratch on your new car. Yeah. There are some slight typos in the game that slipped into the final production.
Oh.
One of the biggest ones being one of the technology cards says take two command tokens instead of 1 during the end turn, when the rule book clearly states you get 2. So we house ruled it. They said, well, maybe they mean 3 instead of 2 instead of 2 instead of 1. There are little things like that scattered throughout the game, which annoys me because the game is so much better, and I want it to be like the definitive edition, but I'm going to have to get some reprinted cards from Fantasy Flight. One of the races we couldn't wrap our heads around, the aerobic, the plant race. We think we figured it out, but we're not sure. The game needs errata, and it needs it quick.
Yeah.
But it's not game-breaking by any stretch of the imagination. It's just things I wish I heard about before dumping $150 on this thing, knowing that maybe if I would have waited till a second printing, they would have fixed some stuff. that it's not game breaking. It's just annoying, right? It's like we know what this means, but it's just annoying to see it printed wrong. And it seems to me like they kind of rushed it a bit to make the 20th anniversary of the game. It's like and I would almost give every other game a pass for doing something like that, but this is Fantasy Flight, and you don't see these kinds of mistakes with their LCGs. Like, I haven't run across anything like this in Legend of the Five Rings or the Arkham Horror card game I play. I'm like, oh, come on, guys. This is, just not bad. It's just annoying, like that bee sting, you had, it's like,
oh yeah. Oh, that
just like,
eventually, that got significantly worse. That ended up not getting really fixed, so to say, TC right away. So it got worse after the episode.
Okay. Well, it's not, but it won't get worse. It's just be aware of it. It's definitely still a good game. They made a lot of improvements. Hopefully later I can get more talking about, get Carissa in on it. We can discuss it more. And just be aware that they exist. And I didn't run across that on any other reviews I've listened to about the game.
Yeah,
and that's
so there's some issues with actually understanding the game because of these typos.
I think a lot.
Yeah, like that.
I want to just jump in here. My impression is a lot of people that are playing this have jumped in straight from TI3, and a lot of the stuff in TI4 intuitively makes sense if you play TI3 a few times. And so, like the typos, almost like it's almost like you don't even notice them, I guess would be a good way of putting it, because they just
like you're able to make these house rules like TC did because he's played it a lot. That.
I don't even know that it's so much house rules. Is that like you basically don't even see the errors because you just play it in the way that intuitively makes sense.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
if it's even more true if you play TI3. That's my impression.
Yeah, I mean, it was something was like, well, this is clear what it was supposed to mean. It's just, like, come on. And then, like, now I got to get hold of Fantasy Flight and be like, okay, I need the corrected cards, which typically they don't do. Like, all the corrections in TI 3rd edition were fixed when you bought the first expansion. You had replacement cards. Same with Arkham Horror, the board game. They're like, I'm going to wait for the expansion to get corrected stuff. So in the meanwhile, I got like a Sharpie. I'm like, okay, I'm fixing all this. Fix that. Fix that.
Yeah, I have a speculation that there'll be a bunch of erotic cards in the first expansion.
Yeah, that's not too surprising. It's just frustrating more than anything, and it doesn't really reflect on the gameplay because it plays a lot smoother, and I like the changes they made. It's just I just wish someone would have told me ahead of time. But that's either near or there. I just wanted to make a public service announcement.
Well, I appreciate that, TC, and that's good to know. I mean, I'm looking forward to your review of TI4. I was kind of worried. Like, I was really worried when you said that. I was like, man, TC, this is so close to his heart. This must be pretty bad if it's making, if it's causing waves for him. But I get what you're saying. It's just like it's such a good game that you don't want to have to deal with that type of crap.
It's like so close to being like the definitive edition. You just see little things. You're like, oh God, it's like, oh, it's so close. No.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, gentlemen, this has been an awesome time getting back into the swing of things, and I look forward to our future episodes here. We're going to talk about PAX Unplugged at hopefully here on next week, so we can get take on what the other convention that's going on while Trent was down there. And then shortly after that, I'm just going to have an entire hour of me crying because I didn't get to go to either of them.
No, that's okay. We can cry together, Joe. That's
yeah, you too, TC. And both. I'll need to call up Kate. She'll be our emotional net for both.
Yeah,
of us.
She'll be our emotional support.
Who went to PAX Unplugged?
Jeff Gamble is actually going to be joining the Good, the Bored, and the Ugly here, and also Carmen, who was joining us in the chat.
All right, I didn't know that they had gone. All right, that's all I was just clarifying. I wasn't sure who you were referring to.
Yeah, it's interesting. These are the first year for PAX Unplugged, and I know that in the future they're not going to be doing that, forcing people to choose between the two. So anyhow, I'm just looking forward to hearing about it and more games, because there's a lot of games that really do interest me. Like you said, Trent, a lot of these games are good enough quality to where I do feel confident trying them out. They don't, sound like earth-shatteringly different, so they're not really causing that huge of a stir. But they're the type that, honestly, to me, like that refinement can really be the game that you want to keep coming back to, as opposed to the one that caused a huge splash, even though it didn't have legs to keep going. So I kind of like this kind of a year, if that makes sense.
No, funny story. The only reason I know Jeff went to PAX is he accidentally butt dialed me on my cell phone. So I got to talk to him while I was at PAX.
Thanks, Jeff.
He said it was really crowded. He said there's a lot more people than he expected. So I'm curious to hear what his take is on it.
Well, we'll look forward to that. Well, and thank you so much. Thanks to both of you guys for joining us, and also everybody who was in the chat. At one point, we had Dean, we had Luke, we had a newcomer here. Went by the screen name of Hornet's Nest. We had Carmen in the chat. We also had Norm there joining us. I mean, there was just, if I didn't say your name, I apologize, but it was just really great to hear from you guys as we were recording this. Make sure you check out the live recordings. We try to record every single Thursday at 9 o'clock Central Time. So come and join us and participate in the chats, be a part of this community. And we all just have an absolute blast together. And I appreciate, Trent, you sharing, imparting your knowledge here of these different games, because just a little taste that I got of Gaia Project was great. And it was good to hear your take on all these other games. So thank you so much for sharing that.
No problem.
Well, this has been another episode to stick in the archives of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly. I'm your host, Joe Sallin. I've been joined tonight by the gentleman who went to BGG Con,
Trent Hamm,
as well as he who no longer has the emotional support to be able to stand the name calling that I'm about to inflict on him.
Yeah, it was TC. I was here, and my daughter, who is now working on her school project. I'm glad she was here to interject on Munchkin.
It's good, every now and then you kind of wonder, TC is what's the priorities there? Are we watching the family? Is the family watching Chucky, or is the family doing homework? And it seems pretty clear, TC, that you know how to your kids know what's priority number one, and it's nice to have such a hobby that you can all share together like gaming.
No, it's all fun.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed this episode of The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly, and catch us next week here on The Good, the Bored, and the Ugly.